Seattle, Washington, has always been a city of beautiful contrasts, the lush, green landscapes and the vibrant urban life. It was in this city that I fell in love with biking, finding solace in the freedom of the open road. But one summer night, my love for biking would be overshadowed by a nightmarish experience I'll never forget. I decided to embark on a solo night ride through the city's streets, craving the solitude and the cool breeze on my face. The streets were eerily empty, and the city's lights cast long shadows on the pavement. As I pedaled along, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I glanced over my shoulder and saw a man on a bike, his presence mirroring mine from a distance. I initially brushed it off, thinking it was a fellow night rider. But as I continued down the quiet streets, the man persisted, always maintaining a careful distance. Doubt gnawed at me. Why was he following me? The unease grew with each pedal stroke, and I decided to change my route, hoping it was just a bizarre coincidence. I made sharp turns through unfamiliar neighborhoods, but the man remained in pursuit. Eventually, I found myself on a desolate stretch of road, far from the bustling heart of the city. The stranger's bike drew nearer, his face hidden beneath a hood, and that's when he began to mutter strange words, a language I couldn't recognize, filled with eerie cadence. My heart raced as fear coursed through me. I pedaled as fast as my legs would allow, trying to outpace the sinister presence behind me. But no matter how fast I went, he stayed right on my tail, as if toying with me. Desperation set in, and I reached into my bag, pulled out my phone, and dialed 911. I pretended to have a casual conversation with a friend, describing my location and making sure the stranger could hear my words. It seemed to work, and the man veered off into the darkness, disappearing from sight. I waited until I was absolutely sure he was gone before pedaling back home, shaken to my core by the unnerving encounter. To this day, I can't fathom what the man's intentions were or why he chose to stalk me on that eerie night ride. I'm Tom, and this happened to me in the small town of Eureka Springs, Arkansas. I was an adventurous biker, always on the lookout for new trails. One day, a fellow biker told me about an abandoned trail deep in the woods that promised an exhilarating ride. A fellow biker had told me about an abandoned trail hidden deep in the woods, a trail that promised an exhilarating ride, but one that had been forgotten by most. Intrigued by the prospect of a new adventure, I set out early one morning to find it, eager to conquer the unknown. The trailhead was barely visible, obscured by overgrown vegetation and a dense canopy of trees. As I ventured deeper into the woods, the path grew narrower, and the foliage closed in around me. The serenity of the forest enveloped me, and for a while, I relished the solitude. But as the minutes turned into hours, and the trail seemed to stretch endlessly into the wilderness, a sense of unease began to take hold. The woods, once inviting, now felt oppressive, as if the very trees were closing in on me, blocking out the daylight. And then, I heard it, the faintest rustling of leaves behind me. I slowed my pace, trying to shake off the unease. But when I glanced over my shoulder, I saw a figure, a shadowy presence that seemed to materialize from the depths of the forest. I swallowed hard, trying to convince myself that it was just my imagination playing tricks on me. But the figure remained, always just at the edge of my vision, like a specter haunting my ride. Fear gnawed at me as I pedaled faster, determined to outpace the unsettling pursuer. But the figure matched my speed effortlessly, drawing closer with each passing moment. Panic surged through me, and my heart pounded in my chest. I needed to get out of there, to escape the relentless pursuit that had turned this adventure into a nightmare. With no other options, I decided to take a risk. I veered off the trail, navigating a steep incline and diving into a thicket of dense trees. My tires skidded on the rocky ground, and I tumbled off my bike, bruised and disoriented. As I struggled to my feet, the figure emerged from the trees. They were shrouded in a hood, their face hidden in the shadows. They began to mutter strange words, and an icy dread washed over me. The words were indecipherable, but their tone was malevolent, sending shivers down my spine. In a blind panic, I grabbed my bike and sprinted back in the direction I had come, not daring to look back until I reached the safety of my car. The whispers that had haunted me grew fainter, fading into the distance as I left the woods behind. To this day, I have no explanation for the encounter on that abandoned trail. The memory of those whispers and that haunting figure still lingers, a chilling reminder of the darkness that can lurk in the most unexpected places. My name is Luke, and I've always been an adventurous soul. When my family moved to a small town nestled in the heart of the Colorado Rockies, I was overjoyed. The endless trails, lush forests, and rugged mountains became my playground. However, not all adventures are filled with exhilaration, some carry a chilling darkness. One summer, I decided to explore a less traveled path that wound its way up a remote mountain. The trail was known to be treacherous, but the allure of the unknown beckoned me. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows on the forest, I embarked on my journey, determined to reach the summit before nightfall. The climb was grueling, and the air grew cooler with each step. The towering trees created a natural canopy that blocked out the fading sunlight, plunging the path into an early twilight. As I ascended higher, a feeling of isolation settled over me, and I couldn't shake the sensation that I was being watched. My initial rationalizations dismissed the unease as the typical imaginings of a young, adventurous mind. Yet, as I ventured further into the dense woods, the eerie sensation persisted. It was as if unseen eyes followed my every move, their gaze penetrating the dimly lit forest. My heart raced, and I paused to catch my breath. A whisper of wind rustled the leaves, but there was something off about it, almost like a faint murmur, too subtle to decipher. I strained my ears to listen, trying to discern the source of the sound. The whispers grew louder, still indistinct but undeniably unsettling. My senses went on high alert as I considered the possibility that I was not alone on this desolate mountain. The hairs on the back of my neck stood on end as the forest seemed to come alive with a sinister energy. I quickened my pace, the urgency to reach the summit now overpowering any sense of adventure. The trail grew steeper, the path narrowing until it was little more than a rocky ledge. The fading light added to my unease, casting elongated shadows that danced ominously. With each step, the whispers closed in, surrounding me in a macabre symphony of sound. I couldn't make out the words, but the voices, grew more distinct, their tones a sinister cacophony. They seemed to emanate from the very trees themselves, echoing through the forest. As I finally reached the summit, the whispers reached a crescendo, filling the air with an eerie chorus. Fear gripped me, and I turned to descend the mountain, desperate to escape the relentless voices that pursued me. The darkness closed in around me, and I stumbled over rocks and tree roots, my heart pounding in my chest. It was as if the mountain itself had come to life, a malevolent force seeking to trap me in its depths. Finally, I burst out of the woods onto a moonlit clearing, the voices fading into the distance. I collapsed to the ground, gasping for breath, and gazed up at the night sky. The stars above offered solace, their distant light a stark contrast to the shadows that had haunted me on the mountain. To this day, I can't explain the whispers or the sinister presence that seemed to inhabit that desolate trail. The memory of that night continues to haunt me, a reminder that even in the beauty of nature's embrace, darkness can lurk, waiting for the unsuspecting adventurer to stray too close to its grasp.